Welcome back to Vibes Only. Brian, we have a lot to discuss today. A landmark day at the Supreme Court.
Can we also hit on our favorite demonic leader of the party, Mitch McConnell? I think that he's one of the most villainous characters in the American story. In the history of our country, I think that he stands out as someone who amassed as much power as humanly possible to inflict as much damage as he could long term on the well-being of the American experiment of democracy. To me, it will be a victory for the greater good when he's no longer able to twist the system into ill-fated contortions of his own perverse view of what America should be.
And I gotta be real, he looks like he's been rotting from the inside for at least the last decade. So
hate will do that to you. And it is crazy. I'm glad that he survived to see the demise of much of his own work on advancing conservatism, using air quotes, through Donald Trump. That Donald Trump has trampled so much of what he thought he was bringing about when he broke the system, when he stole Supreme Court seats, when he stacked an ideological extreme majority onto SCOTUS, when he played this long game to try to strip rights away from people and install minority rule in this country. He thought that he was making this deal for conservatism, but MAGA blew it all up. MAGA has nothing to do with being conservative. It has to do with worshiping at the altar of Donald Trump. So many of the seeds that he planted hath wrought doom for his own goals for the country. So I'm glad that he'll be going out at least knowing that much of what he aimed for might have seen the light of day or might have come close to fruition, but ultimately is doomed because of the corruption that he brought into the system himself.
And let's talk about some of that corruption, shall we?
Let's. What a transition.
The court that McConnell helped pack and what they were up to yesterday.
We should.
And
those
their final
fuckers.
day. We got the decision on trans athletes in schools, which I don't think was a surprise, but still was very, very disappointing. That is banning all female trans athletes from participating in team sports in the states where it is banned, where it's banned in over 25 states in this country. So that was just a truly disappointing, but not surprising reflection on the court and the country. Birthright citizenship. I'm in Sweden, so I'm a little ahead of the news cycle, and I knew this decision was coming. How sad on the eve of America's 250th anniversary, we're waiting for a decision from a packed court that was done in an unconstitutional way, an unfair way. It was just so un-American, just so deeply, deeply un-American. But that was decided. It's okay for now. It's okay for now. Campaign finance, which I want to talk about. This is essentially saying that the parties themselves can get as much money as they want to give directly to a candidate. That's cray-cray.
Yeah.
One more, the Slaughter case, which was around Lisa Cook, who Trump was trying to remove from the Fed. This did overturn 90 plus years of precedent that these independent federal agencies did not have to answer to, specifically the president, in terms of keeping their job. They said, actually, you do, except for the Fed. But that's crazy. So just zooming out before we get into some of the details, to me, it feels like the Supreme Court is showing the country how much power they want to have. The balance of powers here, it's is it that balance when the Supreme Court seems to just be doing the work of the president?
Right.
And then with these cases, especially with Slaughter, it's you are consolidating the power into the executive. This is always what Trump wanted, but it's happening. And I want to talk about some of the immediate implications of these cases, but then I'm also trying to remain hopeful, and I'm trying to imagine a world in which we have power, and with this expanded presidential power, what in good hands, good democratic presidential hands, could we do with some of this power? Let's start with the campaign finance, because that's chopping my ass a little bit. And clenching my butt thinking about 28.
Yeah, it's definitely the most confusing of the cases for sure. The ruling says that parties can spend as much as they want in direct coordination with a campaign. There were previously limits, around $130,000 for a congressional, up to $4 million for a Senate race. What this does is it allows the parties more control over who runs, who gets supported in their election. It gives them more purchasing power because they can buy at candidate rates, which can be as little as a quarter of what the parties were previously paying for their IE.
What does that mean?
It means that by law, candidates get the lowest possible ad rates. When they buy advertising on TV or through a marketplace, they get the lowest possible rates. That didn't apply to parties. It doesn't apply to super PACs. It's why Oath doesn't advise people to give to super PACs, because they end up spending much, much more than a campaign will, oftentimes on worse ads, because there's no coordination between the two. The campaign has different data and information than the super PACs have. People have invented ways to sort of get around this. What this ruling does, the downstream effects are that it helps millionaires and billionaires. Shocker. This court's best friends, because those are the people sending them on vacation or buying them RVs or sending their kids to school at expensive private schools. Like
Clarence Thomas, we're looking at you.
Clarence Thomas, we're looking at you. The decision really adds more value to max out checks. That if I'm a billionaire, I can write $1 million check directly to the party committees, and they can use that in unrestricted ways to go support candidates of their choice. It gives the parties more power. The major parties will be at the detriment long term of like DSA and other smaller party committees who won't necessarily benefit from the same thing. But for the immediate effects, it helps Republicans much, much more because they have 8 times as much cash on hand in their national committee as Democrats do. Democrats currently have like $15 million and $18 million in debt, and Republicans have $130 million sitting in the bank ready to be spent on this. So it's about to make federal races even more expensive, push more money into politics, and benefit millionaires rather than grassroots donors.
I'm just like, great.
I know.
And Citizens United. I worked at a super PAC in 2012. I worked at the very first Democratic super PAC. I remember leaving specifically because I left politics because I was like, wow, we raised over $100 million. This feels like a lot of money and really wasteful in a lot of ways. And it's just really disheartening to think about how corporations and millionaires and billionaires can now put even that much more money into politics to pick and choose who they want to win and to buy up tens of millions of dollars of ads.
This all goes back in principle to Citizens United and the court deciding that political spending is speech. No, ma'am, that is the wrong take. Our founding fathers, when they frickin' signed the Constitution a zillion years ago, and then we passed the First Amendment, when we enshrined the right to free speech, they were not like, oh, thank God Elon Musk will be able to write $250 million checks to exercise his free speech. Like, are you joking? That's that's preposterous. That's literally ridiculous. So for an originalist court to be like, yeah, that's definitely speech is so bananas to me. What the assumption is that Republicans have been teeing up case after case after case. People only know Citizens United and now this one, but there have been 3 intervening cases that also chipped away at campaign finance regulation. A lot of people think that the next one is going to be aimed at eliminating contribution limits altogether. That any limit on how much an individual can give is a limit on their free speech. That is on its face ridiculous. Republicans are so confused about what a right is that having a right to something does not actually mean no common sense restrictions on it whatsoever. That's not how it works. But they certainly believe that there should be unrestricted access to guns, unlimited spending by trillionaires in our elections, but extreme restrictions on who's able to cast a vote. It's so backwards.
For the listeners, as a reminder on like originalism, it's these Supreme Court justices who believe that the Constitution of the United States of America should be interpreted as it was written at the time that it was written. They don't necessarily have legal nuance around guns shoot faster now, or there's a trillionaire on planet Earth who lives in the United States of America. Which is that also is just absolutely absurd. It's like, you think that the founding fathers could even conceive of the internet?
Right. You hit on some more Supreme Court cases there. Just some hot takes generally. With the LGBT case, this cycle being focused on trans people in sports, now that they've greenlit it at the state level, yes, we need to fight that battle and defeat those bans where we can. But my hope is that we can actually start to really look past sports as an issue. If every state that is going to ban it has banned it, can we take some of the energy out of Republicans' fight on that particular thing, refocus around things like healthcare? Should the government decide who can and cannot have access to specific healthcare? Most people think no. Most people think that the government doesn't have a role in that. The sports issue has always been our worst footing on trans rights. I hope that the movement can take a cue, not give up on this part of the fight, but to pivot the strategy to focus on, should people be allowed to discriminate in housing, employment, public accommodations law? There are all these other things that need a focus and protection. And I think that there's a potential strategic value in a pivot away from sports.
It's still remarkably sad for all of the kids who are impacted by this. And it is, a win for Donald Trump, given that it was one of his campaign slogans.
Yeah. Becky is the plaintiff and she plays sports in West Virginia. Mm-hmm. And she's the only out trans kid playing sports in the state. So the fact that this case is in front of the Supreme Court when it's one person in the state is so wild to me.
And this is what the Republicans are so good at, is that they're able to nationalize these state-based issues and make them like a rallying cry for their conservative, homophobic, white nationalist, racist base.
Before we move on from the Supreme Court, there was a little freak out on the internet this week because NPR posted a story that Alito was retiring, and then they, within a couple minutes, retracted it. Did you see this?
No, I did not.
So NPR, the preeminent Supreme Court reporter, posted a story online that Alito was retiring. It was retracted. She has apologized and said that she had stepped out of the court and then misheard from someone and didn't want to miss the breaking news, and so hit go on something that wasn't actually the truth. But then the internet fully believes that it was embargoed and was supposed to run later this week or next when he actually announces it, and that this is coming imminently, which they deny. We don't know, but this is the time. Most people don't know that. This is the time that justices announce their retirements after the end of the term so that they're not seen as a lame duck while they're issuing decisions. We're in the hot zone right now. And I've been saying that either Alito, Thomas, or both would announce their retirements now, knowing that the Senate majority is at risk, and that because they are politicians in robes, the two of them want Trump to pick their replacement, they might lose out on the ability for that to happen after November. Because if Democrats flip the Senate, they will not confirm a justice for Trump.
No.
They can't, obviously, after what Mitch McConnell did to Obama. So I'm expecting a potential announcement in the next couple of weeks. And it's going to be a horror show thinking about who's going to replace these nutcases.
One ironic thing I want to know on the birthright citizenship stuff, because I'm thinking about Alito, because I think he said that it took a note because it was so dramatic. One of the most important decisions in the court's history and a serious mistake. Warning, it could have grotesque results, including encouraging birth tourism. Like, bro, what are you talking about? Literally massive eye roll. You're a politician. You're bought. You're full of shit. But the irony is the World Cup, you're following Team USA, our star player. The only reason he's able to play for America is because when his mom was 7 months pregnant, the airline wouldn't let her board. So she gave birth in New York City. And then they went back to England, when he was 2 months old.
No, I didn't know that.
Our pride and joy on Team America. In fact, I think the Department of Homeland Security tweeted a photo of him. You guys are so full of shit. Everything is for me, but not for with the World Cup and how joyous it's been, and seeing all these cultures come together and the celebrations, and to just know the court is there issuing these decisions. And then the Trump administration is just cherry picking the examples that they want that completely are hypocritical to the policies that they're supporting.
It's a reminder that being afraid of brown people will make you do and say crazy things. Alito being so obsessed with having a white Christian nation that he wants a president to be able to change the Constitution by executive order is wild. You know what I mean? That's
it's
so
crazy.
far afoot from what his fucking job is. And you can justify anything when so much of your worldview is rooted in a fear of anyone who does not think exactly like you do. Bananas.
Yeah. Sick in the head.
If you want to stay ahead of the news cycle every week, be sure to subscribe.
And we'll be back Thursday for another vibe check. See you then.